Welcome to our special Antisocial Behaviour Week podcast with Jo and Tracey from our Safer Communities team.
Hi Paul.
Hi Paul.
How are you both doing this afternoon, ladies? Okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Brilliant, good. Thank you for joining me. Looking forward to this one. So, this afternoon we're talking about all things antisocial behaviour. Now, on Your Voice, you've been getting involved with our Antisocial Behaviour Week quick poll. Thank you to everyone for sharing their thoughts, because today we're going to delve into some of those topics a little bit deeper. So Jo and Tracey, to begin with, can you just tell me what is antisocial behaviour?
The housing definition of antisocial behaviour is behaviour by a person which causes or likely to cause nuisance and annoyance to persons not in the same household.
Okay, interesting, I didn't know that. In terms of that antisocial behaviour then, what may cause a person to be antisocial?
So I think there can be many factors to this. So there can be some kind of social factors. So people not having an understanding that maybe some of their behaviour is impacting on their neighbours. Sometimes in areas where there is low employment and people are at home all day, the tolerance levels can be a bit lower. So especially with noise transference through properties.
That's interesting. I think what you mentioned there in terms about neighbours as well, we need to consider the impact of this antisocial behaviour on other people, as well as the person that's performing it, other persons that's performing it as well. In terms of antisocial behaviour then, what are some of the consequences? So in terms of evictions, how does that work?
Well, Paul, I think what you might find is that there were some myths around evictions, which I think Tracey will tell you her feelings before she came to work at ASB and what she thought we were actually capable of doing.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that if a neighbour had a problem with another neighbour, that they could report to ASB and they would then take eviction steps to remove that person from the property. It was only when I started working with ASB that I realised there's a lot more steps before that process happens.
Okay, and what are some of those steps then? So we've got the misconception of antisocial behaviour is taking place, should be an immediate eviction. It's not as simple as that. So can you tell me a little bit more about what steps are taken if someone does make an antisocial behaviour complaint?
So we would only take eviction steps as a final kind of course of action. So there are lots of things that we would do before we got to that point. And we would also only evict in the most serious of cases. So, and just an example of that, so in the year 23 to 24, we actually only did one eviction. And I think that might be quite surprising to some people to realise that kind of low number. Some of the steps that we would take before we got to that stage are kind of lower level interventions, such as meeting with the neighbour, meeting with the customers, maybe doing some shuttle mediation. And we always take an escalatory approach when we're dealing with ASB. So we'll start with lower level, such as the mediation. We might issue warning letters, we might do joint visits with the police sometimes, then we would start issuing tenancy breach letters. We would then move on to maybe acceptable behaviour contracts, and then there are some more legal powers that we would use after that point if the antisocial behaviour still hadn't stopped. So we can look at injunctions, and then the final point would be the eviction. So we don't jump kind of straight in. It's not a 0 to eviction process that we follow.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Sounds like there's a lot of parties involved and a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah.
You mentioned about shuttle mediation. Can you just explain to our listeners what that is exactly?
Yeah, I'll let Tracey answer this one. You've done quite a lot of that, haven't you, Tracey?
Yeah, so it's when we go between properties. So if we've got the complainant and the person who's causing the issue with them, so we would go and speak to one neighbour, then go round and speak to the other neighbour, and we'd have, if there was a problem in the property, like noise, nuisance, transfer of noise, cupboards banging, we would have one person go into one property, one into the other, so that we could hear what was happening in live time as to what the problem actually is.
Okay.
It just allows us to kind of look a bit deeper into what's happening and to give some advice to both parties. So it's a really useful tool, and we use it quite a lot in reports of ASB, and sometimes all it takes is that small intervention and that bit of mediation between the two neighbours for it not to escalate any further.
Yeah.
Some of the things have been that if it's been a cupboard that's banging and the neighbours can hear it, that it could be door closers to make the doors not make so much of a bang when that happens
So just looking at practical solutions.
Yeah, okay, so things that you can support with then, so you do your research, you speak. I like the approach of speaking to all parties involved and finding both sides of the story and having an approach.
And we have to stay impartial as well.
Yeah.
We don't take sides. One person's reporting, one person is causing the problem. We don't take sides, we listen to both sides.
Yeah, okay. I can see why in terms of eviction's been so low, because you're taking that time to go and speak to people and find out and find the best solution for all involved as well. We're going to move on now to a little bit of myth busting, because I believe from a poll we'd found some information, and I know you've got some myths yourselves that you'd like to dispel. So yeah, go ahead, let's dispel some of those myths. In terms of age groups then, so I think you've got some stats around age groups and what ages tend to take part.
Yeah, so
participate in antisocial behaviour, sorry.
I think that one common kind of myth is that antisocial behaviour is carried out by young people, and actually when we look at our data from our ASB annual report, we can see that with the 15 to 24 age group, it's actually only 7%. It accounts for 7% of perpetrators of ASB, and that's quite a lot lower than the kind of national number, which is good to see really. Young people do get involved in antisocial behaviour, but I don't think it's as big an issue as it is in some areas in Lincolnshire. Okay, sounds like you do a lot of good work around that. In terms of this antisocial behaviour, what figures have you got in terms of the groups or the people that are performing these actions more frequently? So the highest majority of people who are perpetrators of antisocial behaviour are in the age group 31 to 40, and according to our figures as well, the biggest causes of antisocial behaviour, so where we've got the most amount of cases open, 25% of those are around threats of violence. Yeah. Okay. In terms of antisocial behaviour, you touched on it briefly when we spoke about evictions, but what is the process when someone makes an antisocial behaviour complaint?
Somebody would call in or email to our customer service desk or go on the My ASIS app to report antisocial behaviour. There's a button to click to report it. You can also do it on the website. That would then generate a report by the customer service team. Then that report will be allocated to a member of our team. We have a team meeting every morning to see who is going to pick up what cases that have come through. We'll then discuss it, and depending on where the region where the person lives, because we've got quite a wide area to cover, it would then be assessed by that member of our team to see if it meets the threshold for going any further. It might just be that it's a phone call made to the person reporting or to the perpetrator, just having a chat with them to make them aware that there's something that's gone amiss. If it does meet the threshold for an antisocial behaviour case, we'd open up a case, and then that'll be dealt with by the officer dealing. I think just adding to what Tracey said, we give a lot of advice and guidance to people who call into the customer service centre. So not every call about antisocial behaviour will result in us opening a formal investigation. It might be that the person needs some advice. It might be that we offer some kind of self-help solutions, as in if they were happy to talk to the neighbour themselves. Just another fact for you, Paul. So in the year 23 to 24, the Customer Contact Centre took 1,440 calls of reports of antisocial behaviour, and not all of those resulted in cases being open. In fact, quite a much lower number than that would result in a case. So that's just people calling in, asking for advice and guidance, and then we take the next steps as we kind of see necessary. Okay, so it sounds like we've got a really useful triage approach there of someone reporting that to then the next steps that are taken by the wider team within ASIS group as well. You mentioned there, Tracey, about the threshold. Could you tell me a little bit more about the threshold in terms of maybe just an example for our listeners of something that isn't antisocial behaviour, and then maybe something the other side that is classed as antisocial behaviour? So something that wouldn't be classed as antisocial behaviour on its own would be children out and about playing in a street or nearby areas. If they're just out playing and not actually causing any problems, then that wouldn't be classed as antisocial behaviour. Again, noise transference between properties that is more of the living conditions and how somebody, one side would be quiet and one side would be noisier. It could be things like that.
Okay. On the other side of that, I mean, when we spoke previously, Jo, you mentioned about the word intent. So have you got an example of antisocial behaviour where intent is shown and what that may be?
Yeah, I think we always look at whether or not there's any kind of purposeful intent behind their behaviour. So for somebody to be causing antisocial behaviour, they've got to understand that that is what they're doing and that there is that intent behind it. I think if it's an intentional act, it might be something like playing music at an extremely loud level at an unsociable time of the evening. So that we would say that that was an intentional act to cause a nuisance to the neighbour, especially if it was persistent. So we would always accept that people have one-off parties. On bonfire night, people are going to let off fireworks. However, if that becomes a persistent nuisance, then it meets that threshold for it to be antisocial behaviour.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Moving on to our next section. This week is Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week 2024. I know you've been doing lots of brilliant things out and about in our communities and online as well. But can you tell our listeners what you've been up to as part of Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week?
Yeah, on Monday we were joined by Gainsborough Police, Neighbourhood Policing Team and Westlands District Council Antisocial Behaviour Team up at the Gainsborough Uphills Community Centre. We had a drop in there, we had information available for people to discuss, have chats with people, and it was really well attended.
And on Wednesday, some other members of the team, Wayne and Diane, attended Woodthorpe Tara for again another drop-in session over there, which was attended by the police as well. And they did some demos on the Noise app.
Fantastic.
Just some other bits that we've had going on as well. So we've published a day in the life of a Safer Communities officer so that we can show the types of things that we get up to on a day-to-day basis. And we've also shared a case study from one of the team's cases where we had a really, really good result with addressing some antisocial behaviour issues.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to reading those, and I think from our customers and our listeners' point of view, it's really useful to see that insight of actually what happens on a day-to-day basis and how you go about dealing with these antisocial behaviour complaints as well. So yeah, sounds like there's plenty going on and achieving those main aims of it is Awareness Week, and you're raising that awareness and showing people what we can do and what we do to support as well. Just on that as well, if people are interested in having more drop-ins, they can leave comments on Your Voice platform as well, so please do let us know about that. It sounds like there's plenty of things you've been doing there as part of Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week. Just before we finish, I've heard some really good things about the Noise app. Can you tell me about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, of course I can, Paul. Yeah, so the Noise app is an app, as it says, which is for our customers to use to record noise nuisance from their neighbours. And we implemented this app following on from the Housing Ombudsman Spotlight on Noise report, which said that noise reports were one of the highest reported types of ASB, and actually it was being categorised as ASB sometimes when it wasn't. So there might be times when there is noise from a neighbour which doesn't constitute antisocial behaviour, but it does need some kind of response. An example of that would be if somebody was living in a flat and they didn't have any carpets, or they had a wooden floor and they were walking across the floor in some shoes which made a noise. There is some noise transference there, but there's no intent of that person to cause antisocial behaviour. So it does require a different response, and we might go and speak to that customer about maybe wearing slippers in the house or getting some rugs for the floor to try and deaden that noise a bit. So we've used the Noise app really successfully, and we tend to use it to triage cases that come through. So we'll ask a customer for 2 weeks worth of recordings, and then we'll listen to those recordings and we will make a decision whether it meets the criteria to be antisocial behaviour or whether it needs some kind of other response. And from our antisocial behaviour report, there is a huge decline in numbers of actual antisocial behaviour noise complaints because of the Noise app that we've used. So we're able to categorise it correctly, and we're not labelling people as a perpetrator of ASB when actually it may be something to do with the fabric of the building.
Yeah.
So it's been really well received by customers. It's a quick, easy tool to use, and it means that we don't have to go out to customers' addresses with noise monitoring equipment, which was sometimes difficult to use and sometimes could be unplugged by the customer if they were using a Hoover or whatever, and then we would lose that recording. So it's a much easier, quicker, simpler way for the customer to get that evidence to us.
Sounds really useful. I think coming back to what you mentioned earlier about intent as well, it allows you to triage that and you make the decision, and whether it is intent or whether they're not even aware of it. And again, you mentioned about talking to the customer and actually having that conversation. I think that goes a long way of actually finding those solutions that you've been putting in place as well. Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? Anything else you would like to add in terms of antisocial behaviour and Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week?
No, only that if anyone is having any issues and they think that they're a victim of antisocial behaviour, pick up the phone, go online onto my ASB and let us know, because if we don't know about it, we can't do anything to help. So please just let us know and we will do what we can.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you both for joining me. I found it really interesting. I know our listeners will do as well. If you do want to know more about antisocial behaviour, you can head to our website to find everything you need under your home. As Jo mentioned there, in terms of reporting, you can head to my ASIS, you can email us or ring in. And that's it. Thank you for listening. And don't forget, if you have any questions or comments, you can ask them on our antisocial behaviour page on the Your Voice platform.
Thank you.
Thank you.